Hello, friends, and welcome to my January-February reading wrap-up. I am well aware that I'm late to this video. However, I got my wisdom teeth removed at the end of February, and I did not really want to film the talking video while I had 4 holes in my mouth. So that is why I'm filming this late. Anyway, getting into the books from these last 2 months, I didn't read a whole lot, but I feel like it was a relatively productive reading month. My first read of January, I actually started, I think, in the end of December and then carried over into the beginning of January, and that was What Does It Feel Like by Sophie Kinsella, if I'm saying that name right. I thought this was an okay read. To be honest, it was a little forgettable, and I gave it 2.5 stars, so kind of just an average rating. I don't think it was a bad book. I just personally struggled to connect with the character. Basically, the story is based on the author's personal experience, I believe, and our main character is going through, I believe, Alzheimer's, and kind of just her struggles with her medical issues, and she's obviously having a hard time in life, and at the beginning of the book, you see she has it all and she's having success and everything is great, and then you watch as her life kind of crumbles, and it is a sad read, and it did make me sad. It was so short that I think I really struggled to connect with the characters, and I was also reading it on vacation, which sometimes when I read a book over vacation or when I'm doing other things, it can be hard for me to really get into the story. So it could have been a me problem as well. Like I said, it was kind of forgettable. It was a fine book while I was reading it, but not really a memorable one. The next read was very memorable. I read The Bright Years by Sarah DeMoff and absolutely loved it. I gave this book 5 stars. Truly just such a great way to start the year. I had heard some really great things about this book and it was at the library. So I decided to pick it up, and like I said, I really love the book. We are following 3 different point of views, and it's really just delving into family trauma and generational trauma, and there's a lot of tough things that our characters go through. It really is a little bit slice of life, just slice of life affected by trauma, alcohol abuse, and just it was so captivating, and you felt so much for the characters. I love a sad read, and this book definitely delivered in that area and really pulled on my heartstrings. I really do like this book, and I think it deserves all the hype. My next read was If I Never Met You by Mari McFarland, and this was another kind of just okay book. I gave it 2.25 stars. Again, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I didn't really connect with the characters. In fact, I found the characters a little bit annoying, and I had never picked up a Mari McFarland book, so I decided to give it a go. I actually filmed a whole video of me reading this, and so I'll go into more detail in that, but yeah, I just struggled a little bit with the book, and it was maybe a bit slow. It was also a little long. It was like 400 something pages for a romance, and it kind of took some time to get through. Now, that being said, I don't think I'm the biggest rom-com person. Like, I do, like I said, like a sad read. I like to have that emotion, and I feel like there really wasn't that as much in this book. Basically, it's kind of a enemies to lovers, workplace romance, and like I said, I'll go into it more in that other video, but yeah, it was just okay. My next read was The Women by Kristen Hanna, and I gave this book 4.75 stars. I really, really enjoyed this book. This is the 3rd Kristen Hanna book that I have read, and every one of them have been so, so great. I really love this author, and this is another book that was pretty hyped up, and I believe that it deserves the hype, obviously. The book starts where we are following our main character, Frankie, and she's going to be a nurse in the Vietnam War, and there's some differing opinions about that and about her going off to war as a woman. And we experience in the first part her life at war. As can be expected, there is a lot of tough stuff that she goes through in war, and just that she has to deal with as a nurse especially. And you get to see her heart for these soldiers, and that is really cool, and watching her service. However, then in the later part of the book, we watch as she comes home and experiences the opinion of the public about her being a nurse in the war, and this idea that there were no women in the war, and kind of being shoved under the rug after what she went through, and her dealing with that and struggling with relationships and struggling in her family. And there she experiences loss, and there's a lot of hurt in this book, as with every Kristin Hannah book that I've read. But I really loved that we got to see such raw characters. And honestly, Frankie wasn't a great character all of the time. She was very human, and you watched her make some not great choices, and it was just such a great read. Highly recommend this book. My next read was After the Funeral by Agatha Christie. If you guys have watched any of my videos, you have probably heard about Agatha Christie. I will often throw one of her books in the midst of my reading, just as even just a short little palate cleanse. This book I gave 3.25 stars. Again, it wasn't my favorite, but it was pretty entertaining, and definitely as I got farther in the book, I did enjoy it more. Basically, we are following this family, and there is a death in the family, and it seems kind of straightforward, just a regular death. And then there's some circumstances that cast some suspicion on the family and make people think that maybe this was not as straightforward as it seems. I did really like the family dynamic in this book because, like I said, it's following this big family, lots of cousins, uncles, aunts, and it really felt like Knives Out, like the family dynamic there. Like everybody is kind of just, when they all get together, it's a little bit humorous how they react with each other and how they respond to each other. That was fun reading this book. Otherwise, it was kind of just an okay book. It was a fine book, especially for a murder mystery. Now we get into my big undertaking so far this year, and that is The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini, if I'm saying that name correctly. I have wanted to read these books for a long time, but I've been putting it off because there's 4 of them, and they just get bigger each book, and it's just a very long read. However, I decided to start and try to get a bit more into fantasy, and so I picked up this book. Basically, we are following our main character, Eragon, and he is just living a regular life on a farm with his uncle, and then he comes across a mysterious stone, and that leads him to become what is known in this world as a dragon rider. So basically, was this group of people that they, as the name suggests, they befriended dragons and kind of had their dragon buddy. They would go out and fight these wars with their counterpart. In this world, there is a monarch who is evil, because of course he is. It's a fantasy. And Eragon and his dragon, Saphira, are working to overthrow this monarch and restore peace to the land. And basically in this book, I thought it was okay. I gave it 3 stars, and I felt like it was kind of just building up to where the rest of the books are going to lead and following the basics of the plot. So for that reason, I didn't find it the most entertaining, but I also understand that as the first book in a fantasy series, you kind of have to have that, just laying the land, telling what everything is, who everyone is, and so for that reason, I only gave it 3 stars, but I did find it pretty entertaining. Then I picked up the next book in the Inheritance Cycle, Eldest. This book I thought was a lot better than Eragon. I gave it 3.75 stars, and like I said, I think the first book was putting the basis for the rest of the series, and this book definitely was a lot more action-packed. Once we had learned the characters and their roles and what the plot was, we really started to get more into the fighting and the action, and I was very hooked. And this book ends in just a crazy way, shocked me, and I did really enjoy this book. That is all my reads for January and February. Again, it wasn't a super heavy month. I just think with reading The Inheritance Cycle, that's been taking up a lot of my time. But overall, it was an okay month. I did have some great reads. I had some okay reads. I really didn't have any terrible reads though. So that was a success. Thank you guys for watching and for spending this time with me. And I will catch you in the next one.